Hey folks, Daniel Osborne here. Now, these kind of videos are always a little bit strange for me. This is going to be part 2 of an autobiography, and we're going to take off on this autobiography from the place that I left off in part 1, which is where I get dropped off after going to a federal prison. I get dropped off in a state, in a town I'm not familiar with because I'm not allowed to go back home. For whatever reason back then. Now I'm going to preface everything that I say with this. Jesus is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and everything that happened and that I went through means compared to him, compared to what he went through, absolutely nothing. Where I am in my life, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I certainly wouldn't go through those things again, and I wouldn't wish them on my enemies. Because they were quite agonizing in a lot of ways for a long time. And I struggle and I hesitate to say that it was all worth it. It kind of wasn't, but where I am now today makes everything that I went through pale in comparison. And I just want to give all the glory to God for where I am in my life today, because where I was and what I was going through was indescribable and unspeakable in a lot of ways. Funny that I say unspeakable because I'm speaking right now about it. But anyways, okay, so let's go ahead and go forward from here. Alright, so I ended up in Gillette, Wyoming, and there I started my first businesses after I got into college. I'm a high school dropout. This is the year 2021 as of the date of this recording, and this year, if not very early next year, I'll be receiving a master's degree, which is pretty righteous because, like I said, I'm a high school dropout. I was an honor roll student in school, but I dropped out to fast track my military career, and I was just tired of the whole scene, so I figured at some point, after the military, who's going to ask me about high school if I have college degrees? And that's kind of right. But anyway, I landed in Gillette. And the first thing I did was enroll in college, and then I ended up getting a dual major associate's degree program. I graduated that about 2.5 years after I started it, so this would have been 2009. I got a degree in psychology, and I got a degree in business, and then I enrolled in the university to get my bachelor's degree in psychology. And the whole purpose behind the degrees was that I wanted to counsel people. I wanted to use the horrible experiences that I had had to relate to other people, give them experience, strength, and hope, and ultimately get them to a better place. But in counseling and in social services, there's not a lot of money there, and I'm not super greedy and I'm not super money motivated per se, but I wanted to be comfortable for me and my family. So I wanted to start successful businesses that would sustain and supplement my income as a counselor, so the money wouldn't be an issue at all, and I would then be able to go on in my counseling and as a psychologist, that career path, and not worry about money being an issue. So, graduated, and right before graduating, I got married. Shortly after going to Wyoming, I met who later became my spouse, and we've since divorced, but we're pretty good friends, I like to say, or I like to think anyway. We work really well together in raising my daughter, even though we live in separate places, and we're going in different directions. We're good. It's good. It's healthy now. It was pretty bad for a while, but it's good now. I'm very grateful for that. And while all that was going on, I decided one day to... Now, bear in mind, I was so naive back then that I didn't think failure was an option or a possibility even. I just figured that if I worked hard enough, no matter what it is I put my mind to, it's going to happen. So I decided I wanted to start a hookah lounge, because in the nearest bigger city, there was a couple of them, and they were doing well enough that they were popular enough to justify putting one where I was at. But the problem is where I was at was much more conservative, and people in that area, it was a hookah lounge. People in that area think that hookahs look a lot like bongs, and that's all they're for. Doesn't go well in a conservative town. Although it was growing every month, the people that were working there, some of them were stealing all of the money as it was coming in. So it looked like there was no growth at all. It was break even all the time. And so that was a difficult thing. There was a lot of embezzlement going on. There was a lot of manipulation, and there was a lot of areas in my management of those companies that was lacking, and people that would that have first-hand experience with that are probably laughing really hard, like, understatement. But anyways, I wanted to build the brand of the first company I built. The Hookah Lounge was second. The first one was a web development company. I wanted to build a company that I could work from home and be with my family all the time, and leave every once in a while to go see a client, but otherwise be with my new family, my new bride and my daughter, and our first child and everything, and our only child. And I wanted that. So I got certified in building websites, and found that I didn't have the money to market those websites, so there was more money in building them for others than there was in building my own and making those take off. So I started doing that, and I've been doing that ever since. It's been going on since 2010. Anyway, fast track a little bit more. Ended up getting married. Started the Hookah Lounge. That tanked, and I left town one day to build my brands in other cities. Hit every major city on the way down from Wyoming all the way to the southwest coast. And while I was gone, everybody stole all the money, closed the lounge. I came home, the lounge was closed. For lack of I can't think of a better word. I don't want to talk too much trash, but dirtbag basically accepted a whole bunch of money to build websites that never got built, and those that did looked like they were drawn with crayons. It was embarrassing. So I had to go back through and build all these websites and pay all this money back for things I didn't sell, and work I didn't do because I didn't sell those, and that was the job of the manager that I put in place at the time. But anyway, that happened. Everything fell apart. We ended up having a couple of trailer houses, and just as one would, not me, but some people that are a little bit more ethically bankrupt, they decided to pull out of the contract that we had for a contract for deed on that property after we paid like $20,000 towards a $25,000 trailer, or something very close to that. And right towards the end, they just got tired of us being late on payments every other month. We'd be a week late or something. So they used that as their excuse to liquidate everything that we had paid into it and just resell it again to somebody else. And just go through the process again, reselling a contract for deed. So they just keep pulling money out of this investment. I understand it from a business perspective, but ethically I would never do something like that. I won't say names, but it was just ridiculous. Anyway, so we lost all that. We ended up having to move. So I got back into the restaurant business. And I became a general manager for a franchise called Taco John's, and loved it. It was great. It was great food. I love it to death still. I'm addicted to it. It's so good. So I did that. I went to Montana, where I'm from, with my family, my new family, and I got in as an assistant manager there. And then they wanted us to move to North Dakota because they needed help with the store over there. So I went there, became a GM again, and then they moved me again to a place north of where we were originally kind of stationed there to work on that restaurant. We went to another one that was a new store opening, broke a world record. We sold $22,000 selling tacos for about $1. That's a lot of tacos. But anyway, we ended up doing that. Right before that move, though, things had gotten too dicey. My wife at the time got really bad postpartum depression after having our daughter. She had a C-section, and she didn't go through the natural process of removing a lot of those hormones from her body, so they just messed with her, and the intimacy went out of her relationship, communication left, just friendship left, the passion, the compassion, all of it just gone on one side of that. And so eventually I, in a small way, stepped out of that relationship. I didn't sleep around on her at all, but might as well have. It wasn't good. So, and meanwhile, I've been sober for 5 years up to this point. I was convinced to go ahead and try to take a drink because I was so young when they told me I was an alcoholic. Maybe I'm not really one. So I started drinking again, and that got out of hand. And between all the combination of all the stuff I just shed, it was just too much. So she left when we were in North Dakota, and she took my daughter down to where her family and support system was. I went back to Montana. While I was in Montana, a lot of very painful things happened that I'm not going to discuss because they're mostly unspeakable. But ultimately, I didn't know how to handle the situation of being separated and getting divorced and losing my family and everything I cared about, because at the time I was of the mind that when you marry somebody, it's forever, like eternity. And I lost that. And so I was pretty beat up about that. And I ended up getting back into drugs and just using it as an excuse to get high, and went through a lot of psychological and spiritual attacks, and kind of a, for lack of a better term, it was basically torture. It was bad. It was really, really bad. It lasted a long time, and I finally got out of that situation and pulled up the bootstraps and took off and came back down to where they were, my ex-wife and my daughter. And here I started going back to school, and now I'm getting that master's degree, and I've really grown a lot. I mean, I struggled with getting out of the addiction and staying out. I was in and out, just trying to get back with my family, get my life put back together, get that relationship back. But those two things became an idol. Getting back to my daughter and trying to get my wife back, and failing miserably, not being really able to put forth the effort that would have required because I was so stuck in the addiction and in and out of it, and just I would get clean for a while, and then I still wouldn't be allowed to see my kids, so I would get depressed, go back out and use again, and back and forth. It just kept happening. Ultimately, I ended up missing a couple of PO appointments after getting an ingestion charge. So I was convicted and pled guilty to possessing a controlled substance in my body. It wasn't actual drugs. It wasn't actual substance. It was in my system. And I got a felony for that. I missed a couple of PO appointments where I figured probably they would have given me a UA. I didn't relapse. I simply missed a couple of appointments. Nonetheless, for that, they sent me away. And so I had to be away from my daughter for another year. Anyways, finally got out of that, got off of paper, and then just really hit going to school hard. I ended up at some point falling back into the addiction for a short while. Went off to treatment, and that lasted for a second. Then all of a sudden, I come back out of that, and people put drugs in front of me several times, and eventually I say, yeah, I want to smoke some weed. So I did that, and then I was drinking again, and then I'm back in the dope house. And I was like, whoa, that didn't take very long. I immediately knew where that was going, finally, and the devil was really working on me hard there to beat me up. And he did a good job. So much of a good job that he destroyed my interest in ever going back to that again. So he's probably upset about that because he pushed a little too hard, and it was good enough because it actually had a purpose, and God used it for good. So that brings us to now, where I am almost done with school. I'm still running the business. I have my daughter back in my life in a really great way, and I want to circle back a little bit to the idols. I was never going to be successful in the areas I wanted to be successful in, so long as I was placing my daughter and the dream of that relationship coming back at a higher plane than God. I was never going to take my daughter and be able to devalue her. She was never going to become less valuable. But what I was able to do was take God and make him more valuable. So my daughter went up a little bit, and God went way, way up. And then things started coming back into my life the way that they should have been. Now, 10 years ago, I wanted to be in a very specific place in my life. The only thing that's not in my life now is a down payment on a house. I don't have that right now. But I am in a beautiful apartment, and I am in just loving putting this household back together, and it's just amazing. So God has a way of redeeming and restoring things that are broken. When we put him first and we make him the priority, he bends over backwards to make sure, not that he has to do that, but he turns the blessing switch on, and he makes it all come back. And he restored everything in my life. The 10 years of messing around, with my life and just screwing it up, trying to get back, he fast forwarded those 10 years into like 4 to 6 months, moved my life forward a decade. Because I love him, and because he loves me, and because I finally got my priorities straight. So that brings us up to today, give or take, plus or minus a few things. Not plus a few things, but minus a few things. Anyway, thank you for listening to my story, and may God bless you abundantly. We'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.